Well, hello traders and investors. I'm LA Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets, doing it from a neoclassical perspective, meaning each time we ask ourselves what happened today, what does it tell us about the coming ones? Do the show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube and it's under the channel LA Little. If you haven't subscribed and you want to, just reach up in the right hand corner. Do so anytime I push public content. You get a notification. As far as what happened today, let's look at the numbers. Up day, pretty much green across the board. You had gold and silver sell down slightly. Oil actually reversed on some news. You know, there's all this stuff about the OPEC and whether they're not going to be able to do the embargo and all that business. So that's part of it. Bonds flat. The big move here was in the Russell. Russell up 0.75%. Across the rest of the board there, it did stay up on the day. And we actually had the reversal in the CACs and the DAX. So that was kind of a surprising piece. I didn't think they would do that, so we'll take a look at that as well tonight. Let's take and pull up the charts and see what those look like. We'll start with the S&P 500. Where else? And see how that looks. And bear with me just a second. Let me get to that screen. And here we go. So S&P 500. So what do we do today? We go up and we come right back down, right? It's about what we always do. There's just a little tight range. The little tight range just keeps expanding in terms of time, right? So you had a range back here, a little tight one. Now you got a range up here, a little tight one, and they just keep going. And so far, nothing's breaking them out. And probably until Yellen does whatever she's going to do, they're probably not going to break out. When you look at those price points, that high was 2193.81. Today you get to 2193.42, so you don't touch it. You do about 30.4 versus 30.7, so you're doing almost the same amount of volume. You're going up towards the top. There hasn't been a test. It doesn't tell you anything other than the fact that they continue to want to buy this market. If you go over and look at the NASDAQ, now the NASDAQ actually has quote-unquote a failure. In other words, you get over it, 52.75 was the top. Price back here is 52.71. So you get over it, you make a new high, but what do? You actually have a little bit more volume, which says you can go do it again. And what else is new, right? It's that way here as well on the NDX. And finally, if you move over to the Russell just barges ahead, gets over the highs. And so now the Russell is simply telling us this thing wants to try and go higher. So, you know, when you put them all together, you got no failures and you got a Russell at new highs that says you can go higher. So domestically, nothing's changed. Grinding up into whatever the central bank head is going to tell us, and doesn't want to pull back. Now last night we were talking about the DAX giving us a slightly negative signal, and the reason for that last night was that the DAX actually went over back under, and so as we went over we had less volume, right? Today what do? Inside day, again, this really doesn't change anything. This still looks like it probably wants to try and come back in. If we look at the Swiss market, let's take a look at that one because that's the other one that we keep watching closely in terms of tells. And if we look at the Swiss market actually has the same sort of scenario. It went up, tried to test over, does get over yesterday, has less volume, just like it did the day before. Again, these are not great tells. They're just little under overs with nothing behind them. But if anything, they're saying they're going to try and push back down again. So I wouldn't put it past Europe to try and push lower. And that could come in conjunction with the dollar trying to push back up, because so far this dollar has not been able to lift off the bottoms. And that's kind of surprising with Yellen coming up and with all the news pointing to potentially the rate hike coming sooner rather than later. But so far, this dollar hasn't been able to do much. They're having a hard time pushing it farther down, but it certainly hasn't been able to jump and run back the other way. And that kind of segues into another area that continues to have problems, which is gold. Now, gold hasn't sold off yet, but with the dollar as weak as it has been and gold not being able to lift, you have to wonder what's going on there, and if that dollar starts to lift, is that going to have a problem with gold? And if you look at the gold stocks, they're definitely having a lot more problem than GLD itself. And if we move over to silver, it's the same story. You've already broken down. So it looks to me like, you know, the metals are trying to come in. If that dollar starts to take off on any kind of news of rate hikes, if that's in fact what happens, and if that does start to push the euro back down, then we'll see probably that European market try to work higher. But so far it hasn't. The euro itself actually has pulled the euro up. The euro itself has been working up, not down, which has been hurting the European markets. The way it's acted, to me, given that we've only got a couple days before the speech, you might see either the day of the speech or somewhere in front of it a spike back up to try to test these higher areas on this euro, which would probably hurt the European markets on that particular day. So I don't see a lot out here, just like we saw yesterday. There's not a lot to talk about in terms of, is there something we can glean from all this? Really, no. I mean, the market's strong. The market continues to be strong. If I had to guess where the market's going, I would guess it's going up. All right, because that's the trend. You go with the trend until it ends. And in this particular case, even though it's elongated and is stretching out over time here, that's sometimes how you get your pullbacks, right? It doesn't actually have to come in terms of a decline. It can just be terms of time. And bringing that back up again, here's the S&P again. I mean, what is there to say? Think about it this way. Here's a better way to even think about it. When you made this move up, right, your angle of ascent was unsustainable. Well, as you go out in time, it becomes a little bit more sustainable. The farther you go out in time, the more sustainable it gets. The closer this gets to 45 degrees, the better the chance that this can make another leg up. I'll leave you with that thought for tonight. That's it. Have a great one. See me next time. Bye.